What's up, Delaware, and welcome into another DETV Sports exclusive. Nick Alessandrini alongside Jason McCall, and thanks for joining us on your Monday evening, just an hour ahead of tip-off before the 76ers take on the Miami Heat in the second round of the Eastern Conference semifinals. No Joel Embiid. We'll get there here in a little while, but Jason, we're going to start with the NFL draft. You heard from us last week with our draft special. We gave you a mock draft and some insights from Martin Frank and Bill Harmon of the News Journal to tell us what could happen, what should happen for the Philadelphia Eagles and beyond. But we'll start right there, Jason. First off, how was your draft weekend this past weekend?
Had a great draft weekend, to be honest. The Ravens had a great draft. Got the best safety in the draft, Hamilton, Notre Dame.
Best center.
Best center in the draft, Lindenbaum, Iowa. Marshall Yonder 2.0 for those Ravens fans out there. But I think of quite a few teams had a very, very good draft. We'll probably go into that a little later.
Yeah, well, let's start right there. Some teams did have some great drafts. The quarterbacks, one fell. A few fell, one did not. That was Kenny Pickett, who stayed in the first round. He went 20th overall to the Pittsburgh Steelers. So a weird draft in that sense. Usually the quarterbacks flying off the boards here. 2022, a little bit different, and you can ensure next year is going to be different as well. Over-under already set at 6.5 quarterbacks for the 2023 NFL draft. But we're looking too far ahead now. Again, we talked to Dennis, our producer and director here before we went on the air. He loves that Kenny Pickett pick to the Steelers. Don't worry about the hand size. They've got their next franchise quarterback.
Agreed.
But Jason, let's talk about some other teams that could have potentially won here over the weekend with their draft results, or maybe what they did during the draft. What's one team that stood out to you here over the past weekend as a winner of the 2022 NFL draft?
Well, I'm going to stay in the division that we're in right here in the Eagles territory, but I'm going to go with the Giants. The Giants had a great draft. They were able to get Thibodeau and Evan Neal and then a few others in the mid-round. That's a great draft to me.
Again, I was a big fan of that. Again, I had Evan Neal ranked in my top 5. They were able to get him at 7. Kayvon Thibodeau, which could have been the #1 pick potentially in the draft, the top player in that high school class, he falls to 5. They take him there. So great picks at 5 and 7, and they're off to a great start with new head coach Brian Daboll.
Agreed, man.
And for me, if I had to pick a team that I like to win, I'm going to go with your Baltimore Ravens. There were a few of them, but the Ravens, they stood out to me. One, they get Kyle Hamilton, who some people had ranked in their top 5 on their big board, some as high as the second best player in the draft. So he falls all the way to 14 for the Ravens to take at 12. And then
You're welcome.
Eagles trade up to take Jordan Davis, the defensive tackle from Georgia, part of that championship, one of the best defenses we've seen in college football history. So not only do the Ravens get Kyle Hamilton, as you mentioned, one of the best safeties, they get a prospect I had ranked in the top 15 on my big board, and that's the center from Iowa, who you mentioned, Tyler Linderbaum. They're off the board at, I believe, 24 for the Ravens, 24, 25, and now they got maybe the best center in the draft, potentially the best safety. Those two picks really stood out to me for the Ravens here as one of my winners of the draft for sure.
Yeah, agreed. But also, let's show some love to the Eagles again.
Oh, got to. And
Eagles
we haven't even got to the big news yet.
Had a great draft, but also the JETS, Jets. I love the change in philosophy under Coach Robert and the whole front office there. Douglas, Eagles disciple, but also started off with the Ravens. So you can kind of see the draft mentality.
Has that Ozzie Newsome background.
Ozzie Newsome school of drafting.
Absolutely.
But yeah, the Jets, one of the other teams that had an excellent draft, and we don't give the Jets good news that often. So
again, let's talk a little bit about the Jets. They stay put at 4. Derek Stingley Jr. becomes the first corner off the board at 3 to the Houston Texans. That one, again, maybe one of the picks that we didn't see coming there in the first round. We had him going, or at least I had him going at 12. And that leaves Sauce Gardner as the second best cornerback taken, as projected in the rounds there. He was supposed to be first. He goes second, 4th overall to the New York Jets. And they get some other big picks. At 10, they land Garrett Wilson, who's some projected as the best wide receiver in the draft, potentially, again. And then they trade back into the first round at pick 23 for another potential top 10 player on the big board. Jermaine Johnson, the pass rusher from Florida State, who a lot had going in the top 10, especially the top 15 range, falls to 23, and the Jets are able to trade back up in the first round and get him. So 3 very solid first-round picks for the Jets. All could end up being top 10 players on the board, maybe when it's all said and done a few years down the road.
Yeah, I can envision those 3 players being foundational pieces in New York, New Jersey, wherever they play. MetLife.
East Rutherford, yeah.
MetLife. But I'm going to say this now. The Jets defense will be a top 10 defense again probably in the next 2-3 years with what they already have there and what they drafted this year. Think Legion of Boom. I have a feeling they're going to remind me of the Legion of Boom in about 2-3 years.
And that's what they need, especially for young quarterback Zach Wilson and company. They get, obviously, Michael Carter last year. And how about Breece Hall this year? Potentially the best running back in the class as well to pair with that offense. It's going to be exciting. Keep an eye on that Jets offense next year. You don't hear that too often. But let's get right here as we round out our draft talk. Favorite pick of the NFL draft, Jason? I'll start here. My favorite pick was the Tennessee Titans in round 3. Somehow able to nab Malik Willis, who was, again, top 20 player on the big board. He falls to the 3rd round. I mean, just incredible. 84th pick in the draft. A lot of people didn't see this coming. I think that's a huge get for Tennessee. Yeah, they have Tannehill, but there are some question marks there. Now you give him one more year. Willis, the big thing with him was you want to sit him, let him get integrated in that offense under a veteran quarterback. It's a perfect situation, in my opinion. Again, Tennessee gives up A.J. Brown, but they draft his replacement, Treylon Burks, with that first round, with that pick.
His carbon copy.
Right, there you go. They just won't have to pay him that money that the Eagles ended up doing, and that's going to be something to keep an eye on. What teams are going to want to pay those money for wide receivers here going forward? But I just think Malik Willis, steal of the draft for me in round 3.
I mean, I can't argue with that. Malik Willis going to Tennessee, I said, oh, man, yeah, they quarterback for the future already. Give him 2 years. Give him 2 years to sit. Sky's the limit. But my favorite pick of the draft, you know, we're going to show some HBCU players some love, you know, Delaware State, go Hornets. But we're going to show some love to Jacoby Durant, from South Carolina State. MEAC Defensive Player of the Year. He ran a 4.3840 during the Combine, and he helped the South Carolina State Bulldogs to a victory over the Deion Sanders-led Jackson State Tigers team in the Celebration Bowl. But Jacoby Durant can do everything that you need your corner to do, and I think it's going to be a great, great pick for the Rams, is where he's going. And what better team to go to than the Super Bowl champions, who already have great players on the back end, starting with none other than Jalen Ramsey. So who better to learn from coming into the NFL, and you're coming to a Super Bowl champion in your first year.
Again, pedigree already. That's going to be a good pick there. And also honorable mention for me as we progress here, Nakobe Dean falling to the 3rd round to the Eagles, who we had Martin on here again. We talked back and forth. They don't usually draft a linebacker. Typically, they get 2 here in 2022, but the big one is that captain of that Georgia defense. As you take a look at the Eagles 2022 draft class, 2 members off of that Georgia national champion defense, Jordan Davis in the 1st round, then Nakobe Dean, who was definitely a big board 1st round player. Maybe in the mocks he had him late 1st, early 2nd. Somehow had a medical issue that went obviously on the reports, some medical red flags that he was unaware of himself. He said they didn't tell me, needed surgery, anything like that. He falls to round 3. What a pickup for that Eagles defense to get such a talented player. Another slip there.
I'm looking at this draft class here for the Eagles. I like the pick of Grant Calcaterra, SMU out of the 6th round at tight end. You can never have enough tight ends for blocking purposes, pass catching purposes, special packages and situations on the field. And, you know, a lot of teams like to run 2 tight end sets, so that's a great pickup as well.
Again, 24 years old. You mentioned a firefighter, thought about retiring from football. Here he is back, found that passion again. Hopefully he can produce for the Eagles again. Tyree Jackson coming off that injury at tight end. He'll take him a little while to get back into the offense. So a good pick there from Grant Calcaterra. And a good draft, a good weekend. A.J. Brown, I mean, you talked about it. Jordan Davis, Nakobe Dean. A great draft for the Eagles here over the weekend in 2022. But let's now shift gears. Let's head over to the NBA playoffs as we have our 1st round matchups are finally complete. We're into round number 2, and it's kind of chalk. 1 versus 4, 2 versus 3 in both the Eastern and the Western Conference. Again, the Sixers tipping off in just a little under an hour here. They're going to be on the road in Miami for Game 1. No Joel Embiid. Let's start with the Sixers and the Heat here first, Jason, as we progress into tonight. We did have 2 Game 1s yesterday on Sunday that we'll dive into here in just a second. The Heat and the Sixers split during the regular season 2-2. Harden didn't play in any of the matchups for the Sixers against Miami this year. The Heat beat the Hawks 4-1. Obviously, the Sixers take down the Raptors 4-2 to advance here. Embiid, orbital fracture. Going to need surgery potentially after the season. We already talked about the thumb surgery, another injury, another blow to our MVP candidate.
Yeah, well, I mean, hate to say this, but you know Embiid's injury prone. It's not a matter of if, but when, a lot of times with Embiid. These last 2 years have been his more healthier years, but he still hasn't played the full 82-game season yet. So, but this injury, it sets the Sixers back, but I think it forces them to play as an overall unit and not just feature him as the focal point of the team. So, Mr. Harden, number one, you wanted to get out of Brooklyn, your time to shine. You need to drop at least 40 for the Sixers to have a chance in this first game.
And again, that's something he hasn't done yet since joining the Sixers, but they're going to need him tonight. Again, Tobias Harris has been great so far, averaging 17.8 points per game throughout the playoffs, just under 10 rebounds, almost a double-double a game here for Tobias. Maxey, over 20 points a game, just under 5 rebounds and 5 assists. Those 3 guys were the guys for me that are really going to have to step up. James Harden, Tobias Harris, and Tyrese Maxey. Those 3 are going to have to go for 20-plus each as individuals tonight to give them a shot here on the road.
Yeah, I mean, they're the other 3 of what's called the core 4 in Philly. So your other 3 have to step up, and we're going to need more from the others. Danny Green, George Niang, and Philly players off the Sixers bench are going to have to come in and contribute. And matter of fact, we haven't mentioned Shake Milton's name in quite a while. He may need to get some minutes off the bench and kind of give them an extra push. But yeah, this is Harden's show to lose. This is why they brought you here. So I'm gonna put it back on James Harden. We know what he can't do everything by himself, but he's gonna have to try to tonight. Again,
Sixers 6-8 without Joel Embiid in the lineup. Going to be a big one tonight, game 1 on the road. Again, 19 experts, at least on ESPN, picked the series 19-0 in favor of Miami. The consensus being 5 games for the Heat to take out Philly.
That's disrespectful. I believe in the Heat, but the Sixers won't go down without a fight. I think the series doesn't go any shorter than 6 games.
I'm going to say 6 or 7 here on my end. But you being a Celtics fan, you've seen up close and personal how big defense can be so far here in the playoffs. What a game against Brooklyn. Obviously didn't show up as well against Milwaukee yesterday, but we'll talk about that in a second. Miami's defense has been stifling. They have so many defenders, wing guys that can play. P.J. Tucker, Jimmy Butler, Bam Adebayo being the rim protector. So now you got no Joel Embiid. He will not be in the middle to anchor the paint. Bam Adebayo's got to be foaming at the mouth, getting ready to get in there tonight. Not only rim protection, it's going to be hard for Harden to get past that initial defender. Then he's going to have to meet Bam Adebayo in the paint. Same thing with Tyrese Maxey. With Embiid not there, that's really going to allow him to protect the rim and potentially score inside.
Yeah, I mean, but when you look at the way this Heat team is constructed, they still have a bunch of perimeter players. Mm-hmm. And one thing the Sixers do have is size, even at the perimeter player position. I mean, Max is not really a small guy. James Harden is probably one of the strongest guards in the league, period. And then you have Tobias Harris who can push people around. So I think it's more evenly matched from the perimeter than people would give credit for. I just think that what the Heat do very well with the culture, with Coach Spoelstra, and even from leadership with Coach Pat Riley and Alonzo Mourning, they get players who have something to prove. They're gritty, they're grimy, they're hungry. I mean, their superstar isn't really a superstar. Jimmy Butler is a superstar, but he's not like the passes the eye test, oh, I'm going to give you 30 every game superstar. He just works hard and plays his game, and that's what everybody else on the team does. And we're not even mentioning the fact that they have a healthy Victor Oladipo.
And he stepped up when they needed him without Jimmy Butler to close out the Hawks.
Yeah, and I believe Oladipo will be the X factor because 3 years ago, we're talking about Oladipo as a top 20 player in the league.
All-star.
All-star. I mean, slam dunk participant and everything, you know, but he's finally healthy, and we know that when Victor Oladipo is healthy, he can give anybody 20, and he can stop anybody from scoring 20. So the sky's the limit for the Heat, but I still think that the Sixers still have a chance in this series, even without Embiid for the first 2 games. All they do is steal 1 game in Miami.
And again, that's the key. Can they steal 1 on the road in Miami? Especially game 1 would be big. But even if you don't do that, even if you go, you lose both games in Miami, you get beaten back for game 3 in Philadelphia, you're still in it. Obviously, they still have home court, but you could take it to 7, win that series, even if you drop both in Miami, depending how healthy Embiid is when he gets back onto the floor. But again, it's not impossible for the Sixers to steal 1 on the road in game 1 or 2. Again, underdogs, big underdogs tonight. But they could definitely do it. I do give the coaching edge to Eric Spoelstra over Doc Rivers. I think Eric Spoelstra is going to have a great game plan coming in, especially without Embiid. They're going to limit, again, defensively. They've been fantastic here in the playoffs. I think it's going to be tough for the Sixers to score. They got to keep moving that ball, hit shots from the outside. And Maxi's got to put the ball on the floor, get to the basket, and finish at the rim. Again, Bam Adebayo is going to be down there waiting for Harden and Maxi. It's going to be interesting to see how that dynamic plays out. No Kyle Lowry here in Game 1, so a little bit of an opening there for Philadelphia in terms of losing their starting point guard. But they've got depth. The Miami Heat have absolute depth. They've got all kinds of guys. Max Strus, Gabe Vincent, Tyler Hero off the bench, 6th man of the year. They've got a lot of talent. PJ Tucker, a wing defender, can play both sides. They are a very tough team. You talked about Jimmy Butler giving you 30. He's 30 and a half a game here in the playoffs so far, 54%, shooting 44% from 3. Obviously, he takes those every now and then, but shooting a good percentage. 8 rebounds, 5 assists. His numbers are staggering, and he's one of the best playoff leaders we've seen.
Yeah, Jimmy Buckets is doing what Jimmy Buckets does. He did it in Philly. Did it in Chicago. Heck, he even took the Timberwolves to a playoff series before. So everywhere he's gone, he's produced. And he's stepped up in the big moments. So I don't expect anything less from Jimmy Buckets than to do what he does.
And again, you look at the team statistics here in front of us. Philly outscoring Miami in terms of points per game in the playoffs, also in terms of field goal percentage and three-point percentage. So offensively, they've been better statistically, but again, they haven't been going up against that Miami Heat defense, which they'll get a taste of here tonight. Again, Miami and the Sixers tipping off at 7:30. Let's go Sixers. Let's steal one on the road here in Game 1.
I honestly think the Sixers steal Game 1. In a similar fashion to how, we'll talk later, but how Milwaukee stole Game 1 in Boston.
Yeah, we'll get there in just a second. Let's take a look now at the other matchup on tap for tonight. Dallas Mavericks able to close out the Jazz. The Suns able to close out New Orleans, maybe a little bit longer than expected, but no Devin Booker, except for he was back in that closeout game, so not completely 100% healthy. But the Suns, they're going to need him against a talented Dallas Mavericks team, which has a talented Luka Doncic. The Suns, though, took the regular season series, Jason, 3-0. We're wondering about the health of Devin Booker. What do you think first impressions going into this series, 1 versus 4, Suns and Dallas?
I know we talked about this off air, but I'm going to stick to my guns here. I don't like this matchup for Phoenix. I do not like.
Like you don't like it as if they can't win.
I don't like this
series?
matchup for Phoenix. This is the one playoff series where a top seed may go down. I have it with this series.
I'm with you. I'm not sure if I'm ready to take the Mavericks just yet, but I think it could go 6 or 7 for sure. I think the Mavericks could present some challenges here for Phoenix. And let's dive into that matchup. Doncic has been spectacular, 29, 11, and 6 since he came back from the calf injury. But how about Jalen Brunson, the kid from Villanova, who we've got a chance to check out here locally for a while? 28 points, 5 rebounds, 4 assists. He's going to get his money next year, but that backcourt has been electric. Chris Paul, 14 of 14, closing out New Orleans in the past game. I mean, you don't see a lot of games like that. That's a playoff record for consecutive made field goals. And then you got Devin Booker in the backcourt as well, coming off that injury, but he's still Devin Booker. Who do you give the edge to the backcourt here in this series? Is it Brunson and Doncic or Paul and Booker?
I'm going to give it to Brunson and Doncic because they're going to make Chris Paul and Devin Booker defend, which is not one of their strong suits. They're going to play on-ball, man-to-man defense against 2 of the more gifted offensive players in this league. With Brunson, he can back you down. He has the full arsenal in the low post. And then with Doncic, he can do anything on the court. He's a 3-level scorer.
And again, a big thing for me in the Mavericks, Jason, we talked about it again before we went on the air, was the three-point shooting. They love to drive. Luka can drive and dish. He's got some shooters on the outside. Reggie Bullock, Maxi Kleber, those guys, even Brunson and Doncic themselves can drive and dish to each other. They can hit from the outside. Again, Finney Smith, going to be a lockdown defender for Dallas. They're going to need him. But the key, and we talked about this once again, is that big fella in Phoenix potentially here in this series.
Yeah, Ayton has to be key for Phoenix to get past Dallas. I think Dallas really doesn't have anyone that scares you or imposes their will from a big man standpoint. So Ayton's going to have a field day every game in this series. And the Suns going to need to feed him the ball so that he can do so. But getting back to the Mavericks, we haven't even mentioned Spencer Dinwiddie, who has been one of the best pickups during the NBA midseason trades. He can play 1 through 3. He can score. He can defend. He can play a little bit of point guard before you need him to pass. So he's one of those players where if Doncic or Brunson's having an off night, he can step right in seamlessly and still put up a good 20 or 25 points, maybe have 7 or 8 assists and about 5 or 6 rebounds. And one of the players that's missed from Brooklyn.
And again, I'm with you. I think that was a great trade, sending Kristaps Porzingis to D.C. You get back Davis Bertans and Spencer Dinwiddie, a crucial part. Obviously, Dinwiddie playing a big role, even when Doncic was out with that injury for the Dallas Mavericks. Again, Doncic and Brunson combined for 57 points a game. Booker and Paul, 45. Backcourt versus backcourt, that's going to be big. We talked about how important Ayton's going to be in the middle. What do you see Mikal Bridges do it in this series? 17 points per game in the first round. So obviously scored in the basketball, but he's going to be the primary defender. Do you think he's going to pick up Luka? What do you do with Bridges defensively?
I think Bridges has to pick up Luka. It's going to be between Bridges and Crowder guarding Luka in this series. I think if you want to wear him down, you probably start off the game with Crowder and then probably switch to Bridges probably during the third quarter to give him a different look. I think you have to start with Crowder to kind of be a little bit more physical because they're pretty much the same size, just playing two different positions. But I think you put Crowder on Luka to start the game, and you put Bridges on him to give a different look in the third and fourth quarter and close out the game because Bridges is a little bit longer, a little more nimble of foot, so between those two players, that's who's going to be guarding Luka, but then you have who's going to guard Jalen Brunson.
Key's the next factor for Dallas and Phoenix. What do you got there?
Phoenix, I'm going to go with Ayton, but also we mentioned it off air. Cameron Payne.
Had a good game a few games ago.
One good game.
Stretch got him back in and helped him close it out, but you're right.
But Cameron Payne has to have a better game. Also, I'm going to call out the Tar Heel, Cam Johnson.
11 points per game in the playoffs.
Cam Johnson. They need your scoring, need your rebounding. Step up.
Yeah, they really could use him as well. Again, Devin Booker not 100% with that hamstring injury. Chris Paul coming off one of the best games maybe in his playoff career. We'll see if they can keep it going. It's going to be a great series. Again, that game tips off tonight after the Sixers, 10 o'clock on TNT. Let's get going to the Bucks and the Celtics, your 2-3 matchup in the Eastern Conference. The Celtics, after round one, maybe look like the most impressive team in the playoffs, and Giannis Antetokounmpo had something to say about that in the Eastern Conference semifinals. What a start it was for the Bucks. These two teams split in the regular season 2-2, but it was all Milwaukee yesterday. Jason, no, that had to hurt you just a little bit.
It was early. It was often. It was all Milwaukee. Fear the Deer was in full effect yesterday.
On the road. The Deer ran all the way to Boston.
The Deer ran to Boston. He did not get caught in the headlights yesterday. But it was just a masterful showcase put on by the Bucks, to be honest, to show non-bias here. And the Bucks just actually have the Celtics number. It's going to be a hard-fought series, or it has to be hard-fought for the Celtics to have a chance. But I think that everybody was doubting the Bucks. Oh, they have the Middleton, they can't win game one. And I think the Bucks took that to heart. And the others, as others like to say, the others won the game for Milwaukee. I mean, Giannis had a triple-double, and I think the most impactful part of the triple-double were the assists, because that means the others scored.
And we talked about that. Something that he's really improved on in his arsenal is his passing, his ball handling ability. You see him in some of these highlights. He's able to drive, hang up in the air into the basket, find open players for three. He did a lot of that yesterday. Obviously, you see the 5 turnovers from him, but he had the ball in his hands a lot. You mentioned the triple-double. And the thing that stood out to me was the physicality from Milwaukee yesterday. I mean, when Boston went up against Brooklyn, they out-physicaled them. Again, Brooklyn a little bit smaller. Durant's not a big guy. Kyrie's a smaller guy, and they bullied them. No big guys inside for Brooklyn. This was Milwaukee bullying Boston yesterday. Did you expect to see that?
I did, but I thought it was going to be a fight. I didn't think it was going to be a one-sided fight. I thought it was going to be, haymakers thrown from both directions. But Boston got smacked in the mouth yesterday.
And they said that after the game.
They got smacked in the mouth, and between cold shooting, turnovers, and again, Giannis being a playmaker is really what killed Boston in game one. 53s, you're not going to win any game shooting 53s. I don't care. That's not going to happen. And then the turnovers were just the turnovers. You cannot give the ball away to the defending champions, whose calling card is actually not their offense, but their defense, led by the head of the snake, Drew Holiday.
Was phenomenal in game one. Yesterday. Again, 25 points, 9 rebounds, 5 assists, almost a triple-double for Drew Holiday in game one over Boston on yesterday. And you talked about the 53s. Celtics aren't, the best three-point shooting team anyway, and they are not used to shooting that many threes, I guess we should say. They're not going to fire 50 up every game. They did fire 50 up yesterday, hitting only 18 of them. That's good for 36%, 75% from the free throw line, just 33% in general from the floor for Boston. Look at some of the stats. Giannis with that triple-double, 24, 13, and 12. Bobby Portis, a double-double, 15 and 11, double-double machine.
Mr. Reliable.
Mr. Reliable. But you look down at the stat sheet for Boston. What kind of stood out to you there looking at that?
What stood out to me from game 1 for Boston, Jaylen Brown has 7 turnovers.
That's what stood out to me.
And Marcus Smart getting hurt.
He leaving the game, I believe, second quarter with a shoulder injury. And he's honestly the heart of that Boston Celtic team. Did you think that had a big effect on them going forward?
Yes, I believe, well, outside of Marcus Smart being the heart of the team, if you take out Marcus Smart and Al Horford off this team out this game, it's probably a worse blow-up than this, than what it was. But yeah, those two players, Marcus Smart and Al Horford, are key. Al Horford played excellent defense on Giannis. Although Giannis had a triple-double, he didn't go for 40 or 50 as he would against any other team. So that was great. That's a great sign going into game 2. But you will not see both Tatum and you won't see Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown be that cold together in the game again. Normally it's one or the other, or they're both hot. So I don't think you're going to see a shooting display where they're both shooting that poorly ever again. And I think that they're going to go back to Boston basketball, moving the ball around, not shooting a bunch of threes, driving to the basket. Boston's better when both Tatum and Brown attack the basket. You draw double teams in the paint and kick out to shooters, but also get to the free throw line and make their free throws. So that has to be the recipe for success in game 2.
Jaylen Brown, 12.7 turnovers, again, almost equaling turnovers to how many points he scored there in game 1. You mentioned not going to be like that every game of this series against Milwaukee. Again, if you're Boston, you talked a little bit about it there, Jason, before we move on. What do you have to change? What are some adjustments you make to try to slow down the Greek Freak and Milwaukee?
I think the game plan was fine, actually, as far as how they were defending the Greek Freak. I think you maybe throw a little more Robert Williams at him, just to take some plays off of Horford. But you might also have to I would probably put Jaylen Brown, I would spell Jaylen Brown on the perimeter against Giannis. So to stop his dribble drive from starting. Because once Giannis gets past half court and he's coming with the whole full head of steam, it's lights out.
Yeah, again, he could take 2 steps from half court and get into the paint. Yeah. He's been fantastic. But again, it was only a few years ago Brad Stevens and the Celtics had the blueprint for shutting down Giannis Antetokounmpo, but his game has come a long way.
He has free throws now, so that was
4 years
free
ago.
throws now.
Completely different. You can't guard him like that anymore. But again, Celtics known for year in and year out finding ways defensively to slow down some stars. We saw what they did to Ben Simmons and the Sixers, years back. They did the same thing to Giannis, and that was a little bit easier than taking on maybe one of the best players in the world in Giannis Antetokounmpo. Were not able to slow him down yesterday. They're going to look to get back and try to slow him down in game 2, but a blowout victory for Milwaukee in game 1. They take a 1-0 series lead over Boston. That takes us to our other game 1
game of the night
from yesterday. This one was a fantastic one Sunday evening. Hope you had a chance to tune in. It was the number 2 Memphis Grizzlies coming off that emotional big series win over the Minnesota Timberwolves, and the Warriors who took out Denver in just 5 games. So again, Warriors took the regular season series 3-1. A fantastic game 1 on Sunday. Klay Thompson, a 3 with 30 seconds left to play to give them the victory. I mean, both teams had chances to score in the final 30 seconds of the ball game. Defense coming up big. Even Steph Curry D'ing up John Morant there down the wire.
I just think that the Warriors got pissed when Draymond got ejected.
That's right, and that's where we should have started with this.
That was not a flagrant 2.
And again, I was going to ask you that question.
That was not a flagrant 2, and I agree with Draymond's reaction to the call.
I agree
with
completely.
the bench reaction to the call. That was not a flagrant 2. That was just a regular foul to me.
It's honestly
and he
crazy.
pulled him to the ground. He tried to hold him up, So I don't think that was a foul. Flagrant at least, but that turned a tide for the mentality of the Warriors. I think they went into attack mode even more after that.
And again, Draymond so instrumental for the Warriors. Did have to leave that game relatively early after the flagrant 2 on Brandon Clark. The NBA announcing today they will not rescind the flagrant 2. They have doubled down, and it's a flagrant 2. The Warriors appealed and to no avail, so it will stay as a flagrant 2 foul on Draymond Green. Again, mind-boggling for us here at the desk. It's playoff basketball, but I mean, again, it's
soft.
the NBA,
That's
so we'll
soft.
see. I mean, again, it's even more soft to go back and then, to review it and still double down and say it's a flagrant 2 foul. Maybe, just trying to
that call,
establish something in the playoffs.
That call was Charmin soft. I don't care what you say. It was Charmin soft.
It was. But John Morant, though, Jason, able to keep him in at 34 points, 14 of 31, did get up 31 shots, close to that triple-double with 34, 9, and 10. But the big storyline again for me, Jason, was it was pool party round 2 yesterday. Weather was feeling great. Grab your floaties and hop on in. Jordan Poole, 31 points. He's been absolutely on fire. Looks like a young Steph Curry in the playoffs back in 2015.
Yeah. What can you not say about Jordan Poole? I mean, his progression each year in Golden State and with this season and the current playoffs right now, Jordan Poole has earned a paycheck somewhere. Will it be in Golden State? We don't know.
No, I think you have to. You got to keep that kid.
But Jordan Poole, man, he's been consistent all playoffs long, really all season long. And this is a coming out party. I mean, he had a great game again, 31 points off the bench.
And again, that's where they changed it up, right? The big question that we had here on the air last week and the week prior was Steph Curry coming off the bench. Poole's putting up 30 a game in the starting lineup. How do you take him out? Well, they did, and it didn't seem to rescind any production.
And I think they did that because I think Steph needs to start their game because he's a little bit older, get him warmed up, and come off the bench kind of slow, get into the game. Poole's still young. He just come in instant offense and just worry about scoring, so. I think that's something they can play around with throughout the rest of the playoffs, honestly. It can go either way, and just depending on the game, the climate, everything that's going on. So, but again, great game from Poole with 31, great game from Steph, 24.
Steph hitting some big shots. I mean, 8 of 20 from the floor, not the best shooting day for Steph Curry. Still trying to get back from that injury. He was kind of thrown into the playoffs with no, prior games to end the regular season. But again, 24 points, you mentioned 8 of 20. And it's the flow of that offense with Klay Thompson, Steph Curry, Jordan Poole. That ball continues to move. With Draymond Green, it's superb. He did leave that game early, as we alluded to, though. And they just look great offensively. And then even defensively down the stretch, they were phenomenal. The guy that really stuck out to me, and again, not shooting-wise, was Andrew Wiggins. Rebounding, playing defense. He's hit timely shots. I think he's been big for Golden State. We talk about Jordan
year
Poole,
long.
Yeah, but all year long.
All year
I'm
long.
with you. Andrew Wiggins, you look at this game, 6 of 14, 17 points, 8 rebounds. But if you watch the game, he was doing all the little things, battling underneath, rebounding, playing big in the post a little bit there for Golden State yesterday.
We forget, well, not we, but people forget. You forget. This man was #1 pick in the draft.
Number 1.
For a reason.
And consensus, at the time, maybe a generational talent at that number 1 pick.
I think he just went to the wrong team.
It was for Tank Wiggins all year.
I think he just went to the wrong team early on in his career. And sometimes that happens with players.
Yeah.
You're forced to be the man before you really are a man in this case, or you're just forced to be the man and you don't have anyone who's been the man that can teach you how to be the man. I think that was his problem in Minnesota, namely also playing with Big Cat.
Yeah.
Not really the best fit for his demeanor or his playing style. And I think that contributed to his success or lack thereof, which he still had moderate success. We're not he's no Kwame Brown.
And I do think it has a lot to do with the confidence, as you mentioned. In Minnesota, he was a quiet, kind of I don't want to say shy player when he first entered the league. He's getting more and more confident making that first All-Star appearance here this past season. More comfortable in Golden State with some of those other stars alongside him. Doesn't have to be the main guy, as you alluded to. And I think he's been playing very well for them, and he ends up in a great spot there with Golden State. But then you look at the Grizzlies. We talked about John Morant. Your boy Jaren Jackson Jr., they stepped up for him. Obviously, they didn't get the victory, but they needed him, and he showed up yesterday for him.
I've been calling him out all playoffs long. He finally had a game where I can actually talk about him in a positive light.
That's right.
33 points, 10 of 18 from the floor, 10 rebounds, but he hit some timely threes.
He was
I think 3
unconscious
back-to-back in the
yesterday.
fourth quarter.
From deep, they were
going
deep.
back and forth. Him and Poole were going back and forth, shooting threes in the fourth quarter, and he kept Memphis in the game. And that's what they need. And I think Ja Morant's 34 points is a little misleading because, again, 31 shots.
Yeah.
Ja's is normally more economical than that from the floor.
Especially getting in the paint. He shot a lot of threes yesterday. That's usually not what he does, not his game. He's usually drive and finish.
And that's why you look at Bane, 3 of 10, 9 points. That can't happen again. And Dylan Brooks has to stay out of foul trouble. That's his problem. He's been complaining to the refs all playoffs long. 8 points, 3 for 13. He has to be quiet and play his game because Dillon Brooks is the heart and soul of this team. And when he has a good game, they normally win. And when he has a good game, everyone else has a good game because he can kind of change the tide for them.
Again, this one, 114 down the stretch. I think and again, this might be the X factor for me. I think he's the reason the Grizzlies are having this much success. As you see, this would be the game-winning shot from Klay Thompson, as no team would score for the final 36.5 seconds. Brandon Clark, to me, and I pointed this out in the first round when he came off the bench when they realized Steven Adams couldn't play in that series against Minnesota because defensively they couldn't, on the floor. Brandon Clark has been huge. Athletic, blocking shots, rebounding, physical, the putbacks on the glass. 12 points, 9 rebounds yesterday. But again, if you watch the game, he's been so big for Memphis in a series, in the playoffs where Steven Adams can't even get on the floor.
He has. Brandon Clark has a weird game, but it works. He's a high energy hustle guy. And you can't have enough of those, especially in the playoffs when some of your main guys haven't got going yet, but also he can come at any time and do what he does in these games. So Brandon Clark is a very big piece for this Memphis team.
Going forward especially.
But he's playing like somebody else that played in the first round. I look at Brandon Clark the way I look at Nick Claxton from the Nets. Just high energy, can change the game just by doing the little things, the small things. And sometimes you forget that they're there, but when the box score shows up, they have a big presence.
Again,
and he's one of those players.
Brandon Clark, a big reason. That's why they were able to beat Minnesota. A big reason that they were able to hang in that game with Golden State yesterday. But again, I think you hit it on the head earlier. I don't think, again, the Warriors, in my opinion, they stole this one on the road in Memphis. Again, Desmond Bane, 9 points. He has been great throughout the playoffs. 3-point shooting has been phenomenal. He will not, and I'll guarantee you can put the camera on me, he will not score less than double digits the entire rest of the series. There's no way. He will not. Yeah. It's not going to happen. And same thing with Dillon Brooks. You talked about the foul trouble. Those two combined for 17. That will not happen again the rest of the series. At least. So again, Desmond Bane, it could arguably have been one of the most important players here for the Grizzlies this year. Again, John Morant giving Bane that most improved player award.
Because he was the most improved player.
I mean, again,
between him, let's talk about that for a second. I feel like it was disrespectful to give John Morant the most improved player award.
And that's kind of the thin line, right? It's an MVP candidate, but what do you do with those guys that come out of nowhere? Obviously, second pick, everybody expected him to blossom into a superstar. But when you go from, being pretty good to MVP candidate, what do you think about that? Is that most improved player? You said it's disrespectful.
Yeah, I think, like, the reason why that's the reason why he gave the trophy to Desmond Bane.
I would have done the same thing.
I would have done the same thing, but I would say the two players who should have been in the running for most improved player this season, well, 3.
I got one of them.
Jordan Poole, of course, Desmond Bane, and right here in our own backyard,
there you go. You read
Tyrese
it, right?
Maxey.
Tyrese Maxey. Those three, I
those
agree
were
with
the
you
3.
100%.
If there's not those 3 in the conversation, I don't know what. I mean, it's great that Ja won the award, but I feel like he's been consistent enough to not even be in that discussion, if you will.
Yeah, again, it's going to be like that every year, deciding, most improved versus MVP. It's going to be a tough discussion going forward. Again, yesterday, DeAnthony Melton giving some good minutes to the Grizzlies. 14 points for him, 3 of 6 from beyond the arc, 7 rebounds. If he's able to keep that up, especially off the bench in his limited minutes, that'll help some more. But again, Bane and Brooks and Clark, those 2 were the keys for me going forward for the Grizzlies. What do you think? What do the Grizzlies got to do to get back in this one? I mean, we already talked about the small things there with Bane and Brooks. Is there anything else you pictured that'll let them back in here?
Yeah, I think Bane and Brooks had bad offensive games that Ja took too many shots. Honestly, Ja is not a person who needs to shoot the ball 31 times in the game. Ja is more of around 15 to 20 shot guy per game because he's more economic, gets the free throw line a lot, and gets points that way.
Absolutely.
And
led the NBA in points in the paint.
And 3-point shooting isn't his game yet.
And that's where I was going to go. Yeah. He shot 11 threes, 4 of 11, not a bad percentage there, but he shot 11. Regular season averaged a little over 2. I think it's 2.2 a game. Yeah. So what a difference. That was the jump in the shooting we talked about. 11 threes, averaged 2 a game. Shooting, not make 2, averaged 2 shots from 3 a game for John Morant. Took 11 yesterday.
Yeah, I think that was the difference in this game because they fell in love with the 3 playing against Golden State. You're not going to match Golden State shooting 3s. It's not going to happen. No team has done it yet.
I don't care who you are.
Since this team has been constructed since 2014, no team's been able to shoot with Golden State. So you got to play your own game and stop them from using theirs against you. But you can't play Golden State at their game, expect to beat them in any game. It's not going to happen.
Again, quickly before we go here as we close out our show, the Sixers now 20 minutes away from tip-off in Game 1. Let's go through the series. Bucks and Celtics, who do you got there and how many games?
I'm going to have to go and stick with my guys, the Boston Celtics. It may take them 7 games, though.
I'm going to say Milwaukee in 6.
I can't argue with that.
Yeah, that's a tough one. Again,
Yeah.
Boston, if we see that Boston team we saw against Brooklyn, again, emotional series against Brooklyn come down. I think it's going to take them a game to settle in, as you mentioned before we went on the air.
But when you're playing against the best player in the world, it's
it.
not going to be easy.
Can't do it,
And
absolutely.
again, Giannis is the best player in the world. You can at me whatever one you want to do. He's the best player
Right
in the
now,
world.
I might have to agree with you. And again, you might not find that same agreement other places. Grizzlies, Warriors, what do you got?
This is a series that my heart is telling me Memphis, but my head's telling me Golden State. It's that kind of series.
Trust? I'm going to go with the Warriors in 6. By the way, the Warriors are going to win the championship. Write it down and continue. See, I'm just going to slide that nugget right in there for everybody at home.
All right, well, just for that, I will play devil's advocate,
There you go.
and I'll go Grizzlies in 6.
Grizzlies. And again, we talked back at the beginning of the playoffs, Grizzlies were your sleeper team to make the finals, and they very much could. If they beat the Warriors, it's going to be an easier road going forward than playing against Golden State here in round 2. Sixers and the Heat, no Joel Embiid for games 1 and 2. Questionable for game 3. No Kyle Lowry tonight in game 1. Those Miami Heat guys, they're dealing with some injuries too. Jimmy Butler, questionable. Strus, questionable. Gabe Vincent's banged up. PJ Tucker's banged up. They're all going to play, but they're listed as questionable. No Kyle Lowry, Heat and Sixers. Yeah, that's right. We're putting us both on the spot here, right?
It's okay. It's a little hot in here, right? So
Maybe I'll be the devil's advocate.
Heat and 6
this time. Heat and 6.
Heat and 6.
Devil's advocate and maybe a hometowner. 76ers in 7. Again, I would love for them to steal game 1 or 2 on the road in Miami, but even if they don't, they still got a chance. You're coming back home with Embiid in game 3. Just ride it out there. I think there is a chance. Again, nobody has picked the Sixers to win the series. I'll be the one to do it, even though it's not looking too good. Miami is a pretty good team. Again, the top seed in the Eastern Conference. One more, Suns and the Mavericks. You talked about this one earlier. This was your series to watch. What do you think? 1 versus 4.
Get your Spurs, your cowboy boots, and your 10-gallon hats.
Upset alert?
Upset alert.
Sound
the
of
Dallas
sirens.
Mavericks will beat the Phoenix Suns in 6 games.
Well, how about that? Dallas over Phoenix in 6. For the sake of argument, I'm with you. It's going to be a tough series. I got Phoenix in 7. Devin Booker gets more healthy as the series progresses. They take it back in Phoenix in 7 games. So there you have it for Nick Alessandrini and Jason McCall. Round 2 of the NBA playoffs began yesterday. Sixers are in action here shortly in 15 minutes. We talked about our draft recap. Yeah. It's going to be an exciting week here in the NBA playoffs. Make sure you tune in again here on Thursday where we'll break down everything that's happened so far and looking forward. Jason, anything here as we sign off on a Monday evening? Some big playoff games. Draft is now over.
Draft is
now
over.
we'll shift our focus to the NBA draft here in a few months. Just closing words here on this Monday.
Closing words. Just get ready for some entertaining basketball. It's semifinals in both conferences. The game's going to be a little bit more intense, a little more chippy, but also a little more well played. So you want to see great basketball, continue to watch these NBA playoffs.
Again, Sixers and Heat coming up here shortly. Then a phenomenal game tonight. I think it's going to be a great one. Get your popcorn ready if you can stay up and watch it. Dallas and Phoenix. I think that should be a fantastic game 1 out on the West Coast today. So for Nick Alessandrini and Jason McCall, Dennis Pritchett here back running the 1s and 2s. We will see you next time right here on DETV for another sports exclusive. We'll see you, Delaware.